maritime law has been variously described and defined in ways that reflect subjective perception as well as semantics. One view is that maritime law provides the legal framework for maritime transport. Another is that maritime law comprises a body of legal rules and concepts concerning the business of carrying goods and passengers by water. Maritime law is a body of legal principles which govern in particular marine commerce and navigation. Business transacted at sea or relating to navigation, ships and shipping, seamen, and the transportation of persons and property. Welcome, it's great to have you join us on today's edition of Maritime Update, where we bring to you every week activities in the maritime industry. I am Norma Obiaswalo. Maritime transport is essential to the proper operation of any country's economy and a vital part of a nation's transport infrastructure. Without maritime transport, Nigeria would have been landlocked and its economy stagnant. Its importance to the Nigerian economy is in transportation, facilitation of trade and commerce, revenue generation, job creation, defense and security, and many more. Therefore, good laws are necessary precondition for the development of the maritime industry, but they will only be effective if there is also the political will and the practical capacity among the government, relevant agencies, and stakeholders to carry them out. In this episode, we will be focusing on maritime law and its impact on the Nigerian economy, as maritime laws must be implemented to ensure industry development. First, let's look at the issues and developments that make news in the maritime industry. Stay with us. The Nigerian Shippers Council, Borderless Alliance move against trade barrier. NIMASA stakeholders sign service-level agreement. Welcome to Maritime News, and now to the main stories. The Nigerian Shippers Council (NSC), in collaboration with Borderless Alliance, has moved to remove all barriers to trade between Nigeria and countries in the Economic Community of West Africa States (ECOWAS) sub-region. Speaking at a one-day workshop on dissemination and launch of the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme (ETLS) handbook in Lagos, the Executive Secretary of the Council, Hassan Bello, noted that barriers to trade increase the cost of transporting goods across all modes of transportation. The NSC boss, who was represented by the Director, Consumers Affairs of the Council, Kajetan Ago, said the ETLS handbook, which was developed by Borderless Alliance and UK8, contains protocols and procedures needed to transact cross-border trade, while it also identifies common barriers facing cross-border stakeholders for specified products.
The reason why the center was established is to assist cross-border traders. So I implore on all stakeholders involved in trade and transport, if there is any form of harassment or intimidation, please go and report that incident to the Nigerian Shippers Council's office. That's number one.
Bello urged importers to be ready to compete favorably, stating that contrary to insinuations, the ETLS scheme will not lead to dumping of goods in the country, as there are mechanisms put in place to ensure that goods on transit are not dumped in the country. The federal government has restated its commitment to prompt the effective service delivery in its ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, saying it is an essential condition for economic development. President Muhammadu Buhari's Special Assistant on Ease of Doing Business, Jumoke Oduwole, made the assertion during the signing ceremony of the Service Level Agreement (SLA) between the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency (NIMASA) and its stakeholders. The SLA is a requirement under the Executive Order 1 on Ease of Doing Business, signed by the federal government in May 2017. It commits NIMASA to a binding agreement with its customers to publish data on processes and accessibility of organizations-wide information regarding to cost, timeliness, and other requirements for obtaining services in the agency. The Director General of NIMASA, Dr. Dakuku Peterside, emphasized the critical role of effective and efficient service delivery in the country's quest for development, stressing the agency's unwavering commitment to promptness and excellence in its operations. And that's Maritime News. Maritime Updates continue shortly. Stay with us. If you have just joined us, this is Maritime Updates reaching you courtesy of the Nigerian Shippers Council. For details, please reach the Nigerian Shippers Council on our email, website, or better still, text the number showing on your screen. Now to the guest of the week. He is Mike Igwekwe, SAN, a maritime lawyer. In this chat, he shared on maritime law and its impact on the Nigerian economy. Stay with us. Maritime law provides legal framework for maritime transport. No. What do you think in your view? Because that definition is not wholesome. So what in your view is maritime law?
It's quite wide, but let me break it in a way that any layman can understand. It's got to do with activities relating to the sea or the water, maritime. All right, so you're talking about the law regulating activities concerning the water, including especially transportation, movement of goods and persons by some means, and also ports, those who actually carry out this movement, like the seafarers, captains, engineers, repairers of those equipment that are used to actually move persons and goods from one point to the other through water, like shipyards and also ship repair yards. You know, the captain of the vessel, the engineer, and also those who supply them bunkers, and those who also train them, or who are engaged in other. Actually, looking at this from three components now. You have the commercial, the technical, and the legal. You know, so all of this can be regarded as maritime or maritime-related activities. So if you're talking about maritime law, you're talking about the law and the rules that regulate these activities.
So then what impact will maritime law play on the Nigerian economy?
A lot. You know, for instance, Nigeria is an import-dependent country. You know, it relies heavily on the maritime sector for the movement through ships of the raw materials and also the finished goods that make this economy to boom or to grow. You also have our petroleum products that are imported. They use ships to bring them in. You have our crude oil that we export from, which is the mainstay of the Nigerian economy. You know, we use ships to move them. You know, thank God for the Atlantic Ocean or the seas that have, because other countries that are landlocked do not have such amenities or benefits. You know, so, and you also notice that without these raw materials or without the means of exporting this cargo, crude and what have you, our economy will be adversely affected. Another thing is that all the maritime and maritime-related businesses also generate revenue for the government. You have the agencies of government, NIMASA is there, Nigerian Ports Authority is there, you have Nigerian Shippers Council, and the rest of them. They also generate revenue for the Nigerian economy. Customs, Nigerian Customs Services also generates revenue for import duty and also excise duties, and also export duties that go into the coffers of the government, which government uses for carrying out its policies and projects. So employment, because all of these agencies employ people. The ships themselves employ seafarers. The ports have those who go there with a view to carrying out some business or the other. These clearing agents, they rely on the maritime sector for employment and also for income. And when you go there, you see cottage industries that are growing because they find the seaports to be very beneficial to actually getting their businesses properly conducted at a cheaper rates, or perhaps in terms of marketing. And one other thing is the market. And then, of course, you look at the educational sector. Manoron is set up because Nigeria believes in having some institution that will train seafarers that will man these vessels or provide some services to vessels either owned by Nigerians or by foreigners, but which operate either within or outside the country. So these are some of the things that the maritime sector does to ensure that the economy is buoyant and is growing.
Looking at your explanations, it's obvious that the industry is doing well to bring in something to the Nigerian economy. But what role exactly, or what do you think we should do or needs to be done about the maritime laws to improve the industry?
Well, a lot. You see, because the maritime sector is one that has cross-border implications, in the sense that, well, you see, the Atlantic Ocean, for instance, goes from beyond one country to the other. So you have cross-border activities or interactions. It's international in nature, and by virtue of that, you have treaties, international treaties that regulate the maritime sector and automatically would affect positively or negatively maritime activities in Nigeria. All right, so, and part of the sources of Nigerian maritime law is international law, international maritime law. All right, but the thing is that for any maritime treaty to be applicable in Nigeria, pursuant to Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution, after being signed by the Nigerian government, it must be domesticated. What is meant by that? The National Assembly must still have it enacted into an act of the National Assembly and make it a part and parcel of Nigerian laws before the provisions can become enforceable in Nigerian courts. So
you mentioned that maritime trade is international.
Yes.
So how do we ensure unified laws?
In fact, that is one purpose that treaties achieve. You see, one of the reasons why you have treaties is to ensure that rather than have different laws being applied by different countries to similar situations, you have a harmonized treaty that parties that sign have agreed to get bound by the provisions thereof. That is one of the reasons why you have treaties, is to harmonize laws, different laws of different countries. Now, so when you now go to UK, for instance, if UK is a member or is a signatory to SUA Convention, for instance, or some other convention, and Nigeria is also a signatory to it and had domesticated that same convention, by its law and it's applicable. It means that the provisions applicable to similar situations in UK will be applicable to similar situations, and even though they are two different countries that are independent of each other. Are you following? So that is one thing that international law does, and which is why when international law comes into any maritime aspect, whether safety, whether security or commerce or what have you, and there is an agreed mode of getting something done, maybe carriage of goods by sea or what have you, parties sign it, the provisions now become similarly applied in different countries, despite the fact that they are different countries.
You mentioned security.
Yes.
So what role will maritime law play to tackle cases of armed robbery, piracy, and the security challenges we have on our waters?
A lot. You know, I told you. For instance, assuming in this situation, that the kind of situation we've been having in Nigeria, some pirates or sea robbers, they leave Angola, and using that as an instance, or Somalia, and they come to Nigerian waters or perhaps the Atlantic Ocean to rob or to actually seize vessels or take them away or steal cargo. And after doing that in Nigeria, they go to Ghana. You see, Nigerian policemen, their jurisdiction does not extend to arresting anybody, any criminal in Ghana.
Okay.
So they are handicapped. But you see, under these treaties, like the SWA Convention, the SWA is the suppression of unlawful acts, or even the one you call UNCLOS, that's the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. You know, you have situations where if such a person leaves Somalian citizen, comes to Nigeria to commit an offense and runs to Ghana. You know, if these three countries are members of the same, or are signatories to the same treaty and they're domesticated, that Nigerian court can try that Somalian citizen by virtue of the fact that he committed an offense within Nigerian waters, even though he was arrested in Ghana. He will be repatriated, he will be extradited to Nigeria. So that is one thing that it does. Incidentally, we have been very slow when it comes to domestic. You know, I told you about Section 12 of 1999 Constitution. We have been, the problem we have, major problem we have, in fact, you know, it's even more than one. But let me start from this. That you see, before you have an international treaty, say on maritime, there would have been consultation going on, discussions at international level, negotiations of the provisions of the treaty by member states or different countries. And after they have negotiated and they come up with it, and then it becomes a treaty, different countries will start signing or become ratifying. And by the time they reach the stated condition for the treaty to come into force, maybe number of parties that would have signed or otherwise, it will come into force formally. And if it is a country where the National Assembly or Parliament will still have to domesticate it, and they have done so, it becomes enforceable. Now, so these differences, so the challenges we have or problems we have in Nigeria, that is either we're slow in taking part in negotiating these treaties, and then so as to put our position, local circumstances into being, or get them to be reflected, or we wait until decisions have been taken. And when we sign, when it comes to implementation, we see that we're not in a position to implement. One of the most recent examples is NAFTA. You know, this one after, the one that was signed in Kigali, and the president now said, oh, Nigeria, in fact, he was almost going to sign that treaty until he now said, oh, due to some form of pressure, they said, no, don't sign yet. The private sector had, and also they had not made inputs. So he suspended traveling to sign that treaty, and that's why Nigeria is not the party. What we ought to have done before, before we were ready to sign was not what we started doing after the date fixed for the signing of that treaty. That's one reason why we have not signed. So, and by the time we now begin to discuss, we now see that we're now looking at the different implications that the provisions of this treaty would have on different aspects of the economy. So, this is part of it. And I just wish that having got it right through that means that we will continue, because the right thing to be done is actually that at the time of negotiating is when we must bring these provisions home and let our people, those who will be affected adversely by the provisions of the treaty, to make inputs. Organized private sector, NASIMA, all of them. And then when they make input, government will now go with this with a view to driving those inputs. Because what is most important is the national interest. So that by the time this treaty is to be signed, you know that when you sign it, of course, you cannot sign a treaty that you don't intend to get bound by. That would be outrageous. Why would you sign a treaty if you don't want the provision to bind it, to binding on you? So after signing the treaty, why will you not domesticate it? We have issues. Incidentally, I have been involved for the past number of years in getting the treaty that have to do with armed robbery at sea and insecurity at sea, and also suppression and whatever, having it drafted and enacted into law. I have been involved in it. NIMASA got me engaged. Federal Minister of Transport got me engaged. We had a gentleman from IMO, International Maritime Organization, who came here. We conducted a study in the Master of Year. We were all there. We got all this in, reviewed all our laws, and then drafted the provisions. Even got stakeholders in Port Harcourt and also in Lagos to make inputs. After which we got this submitted to NIMASA. NIMASA submitted the Federal Minister of Transport. From there, Federal Minister of Justice. Incidentally, I think around December, the FEC, Federal Executive Council, had now approved. So it's gone to the National Assembly. But we're waiting, hoping, prayerfully, hoping that before this National Assembly's tenure is over in May, that they will at least get it enacted. But I tell you, if you look at the International Conference on Armed Robbery at Sea, where this idea was mooted, I think it was 1999 or 1998 or so in Abuja. And yet, till today, we have signed the treaty, the SOA conventions. We have signed the UNCLOS that had to do with piracy at sea and armed robbery at sea. And yet, we have not. So when you're saying, how do we deal with piracy? How do we deal with the armed robbery at sea? Mind you, piracy is when it happens in the high seas. But when it happens within the territorial waters, it is armed robbery at sea. So, but the truth of the matter is that there is a menace. You see, either fishing trawlers or tankers being attacked, being maimed, they steal their things and what have you. And you know what? This had caused a high increment in the premium that Nigerians are asked to pay as a result of this risk that these ships face. It's not good, because you and I, the ultimate consumers, are the ones who are paying all these high charges. The thing is that even after these bills have been enacted into acts, the implementation is very key. The political will must be there, and even there is no how you can start implementing a law without monitoring whether the law has been effective enough to achieve the aims and the legislative intention. There's always a legislative intention between any law that is enacted or the mischief. Now the question is, when you're implementing, then after a while, go to the drawing board, ask yourself, how effective have you been? Have you achieved your targets? If not, where did you go wrong? Monitor. Do you need the law to be amended in order to take care of things you know? Because no law is perfect. We have not been doing that. And that's why we're where we are today. We're not growing. Our maritime sector is not growing, which is a very, very sad thing.
A fine place to end this beautiful interview. We must enact and update our maritime laws and also have the political will to enforce them to ensure maritime growth. These are the words of Mike Igokwe, SAN, sharing his thoughts on Maritime Update. I must thank you most kindly for coming on the program.
Thank you.
To join our interactive segment, send your questions, comments, complaints, and observations to maritimeupdate@yahoo.com with your name and location. We implore you to keep them simple and civil so we can read them. And that's our package on this week's edition of Maritime Update. I must thank you most kindly for being a part of this week's edition. Please remember to send your comments, complaints, and observations on our email or number showing on your screen. This show promises to bring you yet another exciting package next week. For more details, you can also contact the Nigerian Shippers Council on our website or text the number on your screen. You can view this episode or any of our previous episodes on our YouTube channel, Maritime Update. When you visit, please subscribe for free and also click the notification button. I am Norma Obiaswalo. Until I come your way again same time next week, it's goodbye.